Scaled humanoids with a penchant for breathing fire, cold, acid, lightning, or some other energy, the Dragonborn are a race of creatures said to be descended from the dragons themselves, or perhaps a race created by a now long-dead dragon god. Then again, they may just be the hand-selected champions of a great dragon god seeking to put an end to the marching of evil dragon legions. While playing as a dragon may not be for everyone, they definitely have their claws in our hearts. Oh, and they're not draconians. This is a hill we will die on. The Dragonborn, or should we say Dragonborn of Bahamut, first appears in the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons in the sourcebook Races of the Dragon, released in 2003. What is strange about this race of draconic creatures is that they are a completely created race. They can't create more of their kind through breeding, but by champions of Bahamut willing to give their body and life solely to the dragon god of justice. They are warriors against the rising tide of evil, specifically against the spawn and evil dragons that serve Tiamat, the dragon goddess of greed and queen of evil dragons. Any creature who is noble, brave, and not evil aligned can become a Dragonborn, but few people are willing to do so. To undergo the change requires you stripping away your previous life, sacrificing your relationship with your friends and family, and ultimately removing your original identity. Those who are willing to join Bahamut in the fight against Tiamat and her evil dragons are also few and far between. It's a tough choice, but Bahamut will be there with you every step of the journey, so you're never truly alone, as you can always feel his presence. Of course, you also get to be part dragon. No matter what race you are, you can become a Dragonborn, as this race is created, not born. When someone decides to answer the call and perform the rite of rebirth, they can be anyone so long as they meet 2 prerequisites. They are not evil, and they have an intelligence score of at least 3. That's right, basically any adventurer can take on this task and at any level. Though this might be difficult for some murder hobo players to achieve, since so many think that casting a fireball spell on an orphanage is a great way of getting a 1 silver piece discount at the general store. But it's pretty achievable for most people to join up with Bahamut and take on a crusade against evil dragons everywhere. If you go through with the rite, because who needs family anyways, you must craft a symbolic egg that requires 100 gold pieces and rare materials, plus a handful of scales from a metallic dragon. Once your egg is crafted, you can then spend 24 hours meditating and fasting. Once it's time to take a nap, you then crawl into your egg, it seals up, and for the next 24 hours, you undergo a sort of metamorphosis, like an ugly caterpillar turning into a draconic butterfly. Once you wake up, your physical form turns into that of one of draconic heritage. Every Dragonborn looks kind of similar. You have scales for skin, you have a dragon head, you have horns, you have teeth and claws, but you retain the same general racial look that you had before. If you were a dwarf, you're kind of a squat and stout Dragonborn, only a few feet tall. If you were an orc, you are big and burly, like an orc, but with dragon-like features. It's kind of like a skin in a video game where your base form doesn't change, just your skin deep appearance. Now, it's great and all that you get to look like a dragon and spend the rest of your life fighting evil dragons. What else might you get? You get a bonus to your constitution score, a penalty to your dexterity score, a bonus to your armor class when fighting other dragons, you get to call yourself a dragon, you can't be frightened by other dragons, and you get to take on a special blessing of dragons known as your draconic aspect. When you wake up from your egg slumber, you have to make a very important choice that can't be changed going forward. This decision informs what kind of Dragonborn you are, and you get to choose heart, mind, or wings. If your draconic aspect is heart, you get a breath weapon that starts off small, but as you get to higher and higher levels, its area of effect and damage increases until you have a proper breath weapon that will scour the countryside, just like a real dragon. On the other hand, the mind aspect gives you immunity, paralysis, and magical sleep effects. You gain dark vision that slowly increases in range as you level up, and eventually even blind sense that you can sense your evil enemies even when they blind you with pocket sand. The last aspect, wings, give you wings, and you gain a limited bit of flight that is more like gliding than actually flying. As you level up, your wings get stronger and stronger until they can eventually hold up your full weight, and you can start flapping around. This flight is limited at first with only a few seconds of airtime, but once you reach level 12, it becomes unlimited. Unfortunately, these cool abilities come at a price, and that price isn't that you have to constantly be fighting against Tiamat and her evil dragons, though you do still have to do that. Instead, you have to give up your previous life, and not just your family and friends, but also your previous race. When you become a Dragonborn, you lose out on racial traits you might have gained as a dwarf, elf, or even Goliath. We are curious what happens if a kobold tries to become a Dragonborn. We assume nothing happens, since a kobold is a dragon already. You still retain any hit die you might have had, you keep any bonuses and penalties you took to your ability scores, your size and speed remain the same. The only thing that changes are racial traits like skill bonuses, spell-like abilities, bonuses to attacks or saves, and other extra abilities. In exchange, you get to be a freaking dragon and either breathe fire, see a bit better in the dark, or get some dragon wings. 2 of those options seem like a win to us, and we are quickly preparing our egg nest to hibernate in. The source book also contains all sorts of information about how Dragonborn dress, how they see other races, how they conduct themselves, what they do with their leisure time, that the only other person they love is Bahamut, and their culture. We can sum it up in a single sentence. Dragonborn represent Bahamut and always seek to loosen Tiamat's hold on the world. Dragonborn are always dressed nicely, as befit being the adopted children of the god of good dragons, and they spend their leisure time training and preparing for fighting more agents of Tiamat. There is nothing more important to them than this ongoing fight between good and evil, and while their numbers may be small, they are mighty and will stop at nothing to defeat Tiamat.
No longer forced to serve Bahamut, the Dragonborn become a full race in the player's handbook from 2008. Now, all creatures that would become Dragonborn are hatched from eggs, like proper dragons. And no longer can your gnome hope and pray that Bahamut will turn them into one of these majestic creatures. You have to be born with it. Dragonborn once had an ancient empire known as Arcosia that ruled over much of the known world at the time, but their empire crumbled eons ago. This happened when the Tiefling Empire of Baltoroth and the Dragonborn of Arcosia decided there wasn't enough room for both world-spanning realms in a single world, which brought both kingdoms to their knees. Nowadays, few Dragonborn remain, with many traveling the world in search of honor and the chance to cement their name and legend. They are warriors to the core, pushing themselves to excellence, which makes them rather arrogant and proud. Luckily, they aren't entirely abrasive, as they are quick to admire the accomplishments of others. You just have to prove yourself and push yourself to excel in something that Dragonborns care about. Looking at these creatures, you can easily tell how they got their name, as they resemble humanoid dragons. These tailless, wingless dragons are basically lizards, covered in a scaly hide that ranges in color. The most common colors are gold, scarlet, bronze, and copper, and the other hues that match chromatic and metallic dragons. Unlike dragons, a Dragonborn's scales don't give you much of a clue about them, as their coloring has no reflection on their alignment or, more importantly, what type of energy their breath weapon will be. And yes, they all have a breath weapon, so we suggest you don't get into a shouting match with them. They'll win and your face will melt off. Moving quickly, as this edition features quite a dragon hoard of information, we jump over to the Monster Manual from 2008, which features 4 Dragonborn to test your mettle against. These stat blocks are standard fare when it comes to fighting humanoids, but the most exciting part is the lore found here. As we've discussed before, Dragonborn are considered honorable warriors who don't break their oaths, making them sought-after mercenaries. Since they have no true land to call their own as their empire collapsed long ago, and we guess it was too much for them to make a new one, many wander the lands as mercenaries and adventurers looking to conquer any challenge they can find. As we stated previously, the release of the 4th edition is packed with Dragonborn content. At the same time as the release of the Player's Handbook and the Monster Manual is the release of the article Ecology of the Dragonborn, written by Chris Sims in Dragon Magazine number 365 from July 2008. Step aside, Bahamut. It's time for Io, the greatest dragon god, to lay claim over the Dragonborn. Or at least Io would if it weren't for the fact that the god is dead. It is said that the Dragonborn had sprung up from the dragon god's blood, and Tiamat and Bahamut formed the 2 halves of Io's sundered body, diametrically opposed to one another, both trying to influence Dragonborn to join their side. This article goes into great depth, reviewing history, personality, leisure, religion, art, magic, and much more about the Dragonborn. While we won't touch on everything, there are several things worth discussing. Dragonborns have, since their creation, created clans that unify families in close geographic areas. These clans often had a dragon as the clan head, though not all of them did this. Sometimes a dragon might die, or there were no dragons with a similar temperament to the Dragonborns to unite a clan. In addition, there have been several Dragonborn nations that have waxed and waned through the eons. Still, the biggest and most extraordinary was that of Arcosia, which was formed from an array of dragon state cities. Since dragons are often rulers over the Dragonborn, these dragon nobles who controlled the state cities created a dragon bureaucracy ruled by a single dragon emperor dubbed the Golden One, probably because they were a gold dragon. This progressive empire sought to bring honor and good to the world, even banishing Tiamat's worship to secrecy. But this empire wouldn't be allowed to continue as the foul empire of the Baltoroth, ruled by tieflings and devils, collided with them. After a war that spanned hundreds of years, both empires collapsed into ruins. Many dragon nobles, including the Golden One, and many lesser lords of the Nine Hells were killed. This left the Dragonborns without a land to claim as their own, and so they dispersed into the world, integrating themselves into diverse societies and making do with their new lot in life. Almost all the Dragonborn look back to their past with fondness, hoping one day that they might continue the mission of their once great empire. As one might expect, the Dragonborn appears in the Draconicon Chromatic Dragons from 2008 and Metallic Dragons from 2009. In the Chromatic Dragon sourcebook, we get more information and 6 more Dragonborn stat blocks to send our players heading for the hills, far from any dragonfire they might take damage from. The Chromatic Dragon sourcebook primarily focuses on the relationship between Tiamat and the Dragonborn who serve her. These Dragonborn find that Tiamat's allure and promises of gold and power too strong to resist, and will pledge their very souls to the Dragon Goddess. The Metallic Dragons book has much less information about the Dragonborn, with just a few bits and pieces sprinkled throughout. Metallic dragons and their corresponding Dragonborn are likely to become guardians of dwarves, elves, halflings, humans, and tieflings for various reasons, mainly because they often represent the power of society and the goodness of cities. And that's kind of about it for this book. Many of the other references are just talking about how Dragonborn align themselves with Bahamut, metallic dragons, and offer a few Dragonborn as foes to fight against because they chose the chromatic side, which is the evil side. If you are searching for more information on the Dragonborn, you are in luck with the release of the Player's Handbook Races Dragonborn from 2010. The book features over 30 pages of information on these very tall kobolds, expanding upon the information found in the Ecology of the Dragonborn article. Beyond diving deeper into the history and society of Dragonborn, we also get additional Paragon paths, new backgrounds, powers, feats, and more, all exclusive to the Dragonborn. We get feats allowing you to hit harder with your breath weapon, turning you into a proper dragon, and an epic destiny that turns you into the avatar of Io. This powerful divine servant seeks to bring back Io and for you to become Io's personal herald. Jumping back into Dragon Magazine, we have the article Power of Dragons, written by Greg Tito in Dragon Magazine number 385 from March 2010, and The Bloodlines of Arcosia, Dragon Fear, written by Peter Schaefer in Dragon Magazine number 388 from June 2010. Both feature more Dragonborn options. Each article offers new feats designed for the Dragonborn, like gaining a frightening countenance or following in the claw prints of mithril dragons and becoming a paragon of Io, seeking to rid the world of tyranny. This leads us to our last mention of the Dragonborn in the Monster Book Monster Manual 3 from 2010. Here we don't get any new Dragonborns, but rather learn that the Thykarine, humanoid insects, were once subjugated vassals of the Dragonborn. Before the ancient empire of the Dragonborns was a large nation of Thykarine known as the Valkyrie. In time, the Valkyrie would fall to the Dragonborn, become dismantled, and the Thykarine found themselves enslaved. It wasn't until the collapse of the Dragonborn Empire to the Tiefling Empire of Baltaroth that the Thykarine were able to free themselves. Perhaps that ancient empire wasn't all the Dragonborns made it out to be.
In 5th edition, the Dragonborn appear once more in the Player's Handbook, released in 2014, and as tradition demands, they have a new genesis for their race. This time, they are the literal offsprings of dragons, or at least they were hatched from dragon eggs. Perhaps a lady dragon spent a lovely evening with a bard who likes a challenge. Dragonborn appear like bipedal dragons, minus the tail, the wings, and the huge size, though they are still quite tall, standing typically around 6.5 feet. They have scaled hides like the majestic kobold or lowly dragon, though due to generations of interbreeding, they have a fairly uniform color of rust, gold, scarlet, or copper. There are a few with scales that are far closer to their original progenitors, like scorching red, acid green, and so on, though such scales are rare and may only be a handful of scales instead of a Dragonborn's entire hide. Up first, we learned that a Dragonborn's clan is the most important element in their life, though it is unclear as to how big a clan is, who is in a clan, who leads the clan, and what actually the clan does. Regardless, if a Dragonborn does something to dishonor the clan, maybe by using their breath weapon to spew black acid into the supply of holy water in a temple dedicated to Bahamut, then they are exiled from their clan and are forced to wander the world alone. This is the worst fate for the Dragonborn, as they are dishonored and cut off from their friends and family and clutchmates. If you are hoping to play as a Dragonborn, you get bonuses to your strength and charisma score, as well as gain a draconic ancestry, which is the dragon type that you're descended from, or at least a dragon type that you feel the closest to. This dragon type informs the damage type of your breath weapon, and you also gain resistance to that damage, and it is based on what dragon you are descended from, so a red dragon will give you a fire breath, while a white dragon would allow you to breathe cold energy. Sadly, this edition is rather sparse when it comes to highlighting how cool these very tall kobolds are, but we do get more Dragonborn in Fizzband's Treasury of Dragons, released in 2021, which features 3 new Dragonborn races you can be. Well, not really. It provides new options for highlighting your Dragonborn towards a specific group of dragons, either as a Chromatic Dragonborn, Metallic Dragonborn, or Gem Dragonborn. Chromatic Dragonborn get not only their breath weapon and resistance like all other Dragonborn, but they can also become immune to their specific dragon energy for a full minute once per day. Gem Dragonborn get a psionic mind, which grants them telepathy, but also the ability to fly at 5th level, though it only lasts for a minute and can only be used once per day. The last group, Metallic Dragonborn, gain a second breath weapon, like your metallic dragon progenitors, that allow you to either incapacitate creatures or knock creatures prone or back up to 20 feet. While these abilities are cool, it doesn't exactly tell us anything more about Dragonborn, except that they are really dragon-like in their abilities. If we flip to the bestiary in the book, though, we do get information on Dragonborn champions, specifically the Dragonborn of Bahamut, Dragonborn of Sardiar, and the Dragonborn of Tiamat. Champions have a unique spiritual connection to their divine dragon ancestors, so we're at least referencing the origination of this race from 3rd edition. As you might guess, Bahamut champions are focused on doing good and are called Platinum Knights. They seek to protect the world from evil dragons. Sardiar is a long-dead dragon god, perhaps taking the place of Io, whose champions represent the best of gem dragons. These champions use the power of their mind to defeat their foes, and their breath weapon exhales heat on their enemies, the same type of breath weapon that Sardiar was said to have. Tiamat's champions are the evil Chromatic Dragonborn who seek power over others. They are granted immense strength, and their breath weapon uses necrotic energy to waste their opponents away. It seems like the Dragonborn's great empire has been lost to time, with no other meaningful mentions of Dragonborn to tell in this edition. Dragonborn are a powerful dragon humanoid race with a reputation for honor. While their numbers might be few in the world, they are nonetheless strong and resilient, just like their dragon progenitors. If you do end up speaking with a member of this race, it's probably for the best if you don't call them kobolds. We hope you've enjoyed this dive into the Dragonborn's history. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate any and all support.